Jackie.
Coral. There she is.
Oh my God, Jackie.
How are you?
Oh, everything's just very normal and calm everywhere.
Just two gals wearing plaid.
Just button right up to the top, eh? Just like two conservative ladies.
Gotta keep it tight to the neck. Listen.
Tight to the neck. Oh God.
That's how I feel.
Great, yeah. Are you feeling reserved today? I am. Let's just be extra fresh, okay?
Yes. But we're gonna undress, so to speak, with our two guests and their backgrounds, right?
Yeah, we are.
Really. It's not that kind of show, guys.
Or is it? Stay to the end. It's not. Yeah. We have some real firecrackers in here today.
We do. I'm really excited to talk to both of them.
And I'm not referencing the hit Canadian film Firecrackers, because we already talked to Catherine Lutz.
Although available on CBC Gem now.
True.
Yeah.
So we thought we'd take a little trip down south to the USA today.
Mm-hmm.
Because, there's some things happening there. And we have two amazing creative producers. And I think they're really wonderful guests because they have such incredible taste and they have such an interesting array of films between them. Mm-hmm. And one is in New York and the other one is in LA. So I imagine we'll just fight the whole time. That's how it works, right? There's like New York and LA and then there's just the middle, right?
Yeah.
Like a void.
Yeah, I don't really understand how the US map works. So.
Okay, we'll try and name all 50 states after this.
By the end of this live stream.
Oh my God, all right, this has already gone off the rails. So Mollye Asher is a wonderful person and producer. I know I told you guys we're going to tell you who was a secret Canadian. It's not Mollye. And then we're going to tell you who was the winner of the Independent Spirit Awards Producer Award, which is, no big thing. It's just being the best at producing indie movies. So Mollye won that. She just grabbed that. She made this film called Swallow, which is incredible. And we're going to talk a lot about that. She produced The Rider, which was in the Cannes Directors Fortnight and won the top prize there. Just grabbed that. And has been nominated for 4 Spirit Awards. She won Best Picture at the Gotham Awards. And she had a bunch of other movies that are all great. Songs My Brothers Taught Me, which I was super impressed, is on Criterion Channel. It's no big deal. She's everywhere. She just grabbed that. Yep. And she's going to be so mad at me for this intro. She's so modest. She's going to hate it. So she's just founded a company called The Population, and she's newly a member of the Academy of Motion Pictures.
Ooh.
Grab those. Just grab it. Grab all those things. So, okay, that's Mollye. We'll put her out of her misery down there. I can see them sort of down there, and they are like squirming. So Riel, our secret Canadian, Riel Roch-Decter, is the co-founder of Memory, which is a really fascinating production company that's been just totally crushing it in this new digital era that we're in. New digital era?
Ooh.
That's 1952. I meant specifically COVID. Anyway, whatever. We'll ask him about what he's been doing there. But he's just always just like at Berlinale, just with the film. He's just everywhere. He had Shakedown, this incredible film. He's just there. He's everywhere. He's just doing everything. I'm trying to read his bio. There's too many things. Okay. Just Venice, Locarno, Rotterdam, TIFF, South by, True Falls, everywhere. I'm Riel. I'm everywhere. He's born in Canada. He went to Concordia.
Shout out to Concordia.
Major in economics. Okay, gotta follow up with that one. And I can't talk about these two anymore. There's too many things. They've done too many things.
Bring them in.
Okay, we'll just bring them in. But don't remind me, we need to talk about fraud.
Yes.
and rat film and everything.
Yeah.
Oh God, that's done. I'm too tired. Should we bring them in? Here they go.
Here they come.
Here comes one. There comes the other one.
Hello.
Hello.
Scale of 1 to 10. How much did you hate those intros?
Certainly unique.
We're professionals here. You can tell by our outfits.
Yes.
Yes.
That's how equipped we are.
Okay, welcome. So, what's better, New York or LA?
I mean, given the last 3 months, I'd say LA is kind of winning, but it's kind of a miserable thing to be a winner of. But.
Yeah, that's true. How's it going over there? Just a chill question, you know?
I think the revolution is upon us.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's hopeful change, so I'm happy about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it took 3 months. 3 months of people not working because I realized the world they live in is like super unjust. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
If you want to start on that note.
Well, it's the truth.
Yeah. Well, why don't we start with how you guys got your start in the industry? Whether that was in film school, we know Riel was doing economics for some reason. Concordia.
I want to hear about that.
Yeah. We should start with that. That's very, very interesting.
Has it been helpful?
Mollye, you interview him, and then he can interview you.
I did economics. I kind of a late bloomer in a weird way. I always loved like shooting things. I was at a video camera. I made like skateboard videos and edited my own stuff. But I never like looked at it as like a career or something I could like do for money. It was just always like something I would do for fun. And I think, you know, my parents beat into me that like I should like have a career in something that would make me money. Why I lost that, I'm not quite sure. But I did economics, and I didn't actually get into like the film industry till much later. I think I was like 25 or 26, and I went to New York. I did a film program that was like a 3-month program, and I didn't want to leave New York, and I felt like I kind of studied film the whole time, and then I got this internship working on a movie called Rabbit Hole, which was like a Nicole Kidman film that was based on the play, and I was like an intern, unpaid intern, which they don't do anymore, but I got in because I was Canadian, so I couldn't actually be paid to work in the US, so it worked out for me. And yeah, I luckily, like I'd never driven in New York. And one day in the production office before they started shooting, they were like, who wants to drive the producers to set every day? And I was like, I'll do it. And they threw me keys to a rental car, and I had no idea how to drive in New York. I was like terrified. And it was like back in the day of like before Google Maps, it was like the what do they call it?
The GPS.
The GPS in the car.
Yeah, I remember those.
And I remember getting up like first day at like 5 a.m., like picked up the producers and drove to Queens. We were like shooting in Queens, and I got totally lost. The map, you know, recalculating took like longer than the ride, you know, like it was like, and I was really nervous. And by the end of the ride, the producers turned to me and they were like, I didn't feel safe. And I was like, all right, that's my last day. But they gave me a second chance, and I ended up like befriending them because I wasn't like 18. Like all the other interns were like 18 years old.
Yeah.
I was like 26. Like I traveled. I like could talk to them like humans, you know.
Yeah.
It's like college is fun, you know. So I built a relationship with them, and months later, one of the producers, this woman Leslie Erdang, was producing a Mike Mills's movie Beginners. And asked if I wanted to come to LA and work on that film, like just in the production. And yeah, I like was working a job in Toronto, and I just quit the job. And I was like, I'm doing a movie with Ewan McGregor, peace. Went down to LA for the first time in my life. Like,
really? That's great.
Never, didn't get it. Got like a really cheap rental car, and I just busted my ass and kind of like befriended a bunch of people, and then got asked to work for that production company full time. So that's how I kind of got my start. Just like internships, you know, you start at the bottom, you work really hard. Yeah. Someone's like, that guy's really good, or that person's really good, and then you keep hiring them, and then you know you keep working hard. I viewed it as like a master's degree in like production. You know, like I didn't get paid very much, but I just learn, you know.
Yep.
Because articling, if you're like a law student, you know, you get paid, you work really hard, and then eventually you can become the thing. So that's the abbreviated version of it.
Yeah.
Mollye?
Yeah. Mollye?
Well, I did get my master's, but also I started later in life as well. But I started out as I was a performer, like a classically trained opera singer. and a dancer, and I went to undergrad for musical theater at NYU and thought that's what I wanted to do with my life, and then realized very quickly that I hated musical theater and everyone who does it. So sorry to any musical theater people who are watching. I do actually like musicals, but only some. And then I went to straight acting and then did that for a bit, but basically was a waitress, and getting frustrated that I had no real control over my life and my career. And so I started, me and a few friends decided to make a short film together, and I realized that I really enjoyed the whole process of putting it all together. And a good friend of mine at the time was in grad film and suggested that I apply to film school. And I was 28 then, and I thought, well, I have no one to recommend me. Like I'm a waitress. Like, but what am I have my manager write me a recommendation letter. So anyway, so she wrote one, like totally lied about me being like helping her at the Harvard Film Archive. And I managed to get some other people to write things, lies. But it was mostly, I think, creative application. You know, you had to write a lot of stuff.
It sounds creative, am I right, guys?
Creative lying.
The lying.
So then I ended up getting in, and that's really where my whole career began, because that's where I met the filmmakers then that I continue to work with now, and really found while in school that I really loved it more than I had loved any other kind of artistic endeavor that I'd ever tried before. And arts had always been my life, but filmmaking was something I would do 24/7. So, and still do now.
I can't believe we've never talked about this. I have a dance degree too. So crazy.
We did though, because I know that.
Oh. I can't believe I never listened to you before. Cool. I'll just fire my researcher.
My God.
Myself. Oh my God. Come back, Jackie.
Or maybe I knew that you were a dancer, but I didn't share that I was.
I talk about it a lot. Yeah, I probably just talk about myself more than you, which is why this is our revenge on this show now. Opera though, that's amazing. That's crazy.
So then why producing for both of you? It doesn't seem like there was necessarily a clear cut I guess reason why that specific role was what attracted you to the film industry.
Yeah, I'll go first. I think for me, I didn't know what I wanted. I remember when Leslie called me and she was like, "Do you want to come be my assistant and work for this production company?" I was like, I remember getting the call and being like, "I kind of want to be a director. Let me think about it." And then I hung up the phone. And I was like, no, I should probably just do that job because what else can you do? And then so I learned producing, and I think ultimately it plays to my strong suits in that I love art. I love the creative aspects of filmmaking, to a large degree, but I also like the business of it and the arranging of it and marrying those two things, because the money and the way that you use the money and the resources and the team you put together have a direct impact on the creative. And so balancing those things to me is exciting. And I never felt personally there's any burning desire in me to tell my story or tell a story. I'm not that interesting. I want to elevate other people who have that burning passion to tell their story. And I think I'm much better suited at doing that, elevating others and amplifying other people who like have that need, you know. So being a facilitator, but I think it's all like the creative aspect of producing like is necessary, and I think the way that the industry is framed is much more like the director's at the forefront of that. But like, I mean, we all know that producing is such a big part of that, although there is a lot of terrible producers that give a bad name to our job. Anyways.
I think it's interesting though, because you've kind of taken that another step, Riel, with your company and how you approach like distribution and your short film series and your live events. Like, could you talk a little bit about that? Because I think it's almost like coming from theater, like that kind of producing where you're just really kind of trying to look at the landscape and reinvent like how people are watching things. And that's you guys have done some really interesting, innovative sort of thinking around that space, you know? So
yeah, I think you know, like curation as creation, you know, like the idea that like like I think when we started the company, we really wanted to create not just another production LLC. I mean, everybody has those, but like something that meant something to people and that stood for a certain kind of filmmaking. And so very early on when we did our short film program was like, these are filmmakers, these are artists that we think are valuable and worth paying attention to. And I think as producers, we're curators. Like, we have to decide which projects to take on, which projects we're gonna like work on for years and years and put out into the world. So there's a curation process by just the decisions as producers we make to like produce something. And I think we've extended that out to like not only things that we produce, but like things that we curate. So yeah, we've done short film screenings. We've done a lot of curation on our website where we play things live that not all things that we produce at all. We've done like just so like just full on like programming in like a theater here in LA. We did like a nonfiction program. So it's like kind of like a constant, and we, you know, the whole branding of everything that we do like tries to fit into that. We do a lot of the branding for our own films, like the posters and the trailers. Like, we want to make sure that all the marketing assets and the things about the films that we put out like all speak to what the film is about. And too many times, like, I've seen films that are great like get sold to a distributor and then like have all that marketing stuff like just look bad and not really speak to what the film is about. And so we're just trying to keep a certain you know, I think ultimately I don't want to take too much of the time because I know Mollye, but this idea of like the films, too many times like independent film is viewed like, oh, it didn't get distribution or didn't do this, it didn't do that, so it's a failure. I think for us, it's like, no, the film isn't a failure. It's just like you're underestimating or not thinking about what the audience is for that film. And I think there's a niche or whatever, there's a specific audience for every different kind of film. And I think our films, we've seen it being like very critically successful and like well received, but they're never going to be films that are going to somehow like break through and be a huge box office success. But that doesn't mean that they're a failure at all. And I think if you keep the integrity of the way that the film looks and appears and is presented, then that signals to people that like it's of quality and it's not a failure. And so self-distribution is really about taking that into your own hands and like doing all the same labor you put into making the film into like getting that film out to like the specific or the right audience for that film. And it's a huge challenge, but it's, you know, worth it. If you put all the work into the film, you should put the work into getting it seen. So anyway.
No, that's fantastic. I think like with the two of you, why we wanted to talk to you as well is because producing is so creative, and it's something you said about sort of artistic integrity, because you know you'll be the ones even approaching the festivals or approaching the distributors, and I think a lot of, because this is sort of targeted at all people who are interested in filmmaking, but particularly sort of starting out and building that slate and that brand, if you will. And it's sort of we give it this bad word to talk about a brand, but if you look at the kinds of films you guys are doing, like I would know what kind of film I would want to send to you, Riel, or to you, Mollye. Like I feel like you both have that so like inherently in your projects that you choose, and they're all quite different, which is really interesting. But there's something at the core that really feels like you know, and I think that's something really inspiring for people who are looking to become creative producers. I wanted to ask Mollye a little bit about how you feel like you make your decisions for your films, or how you built that slate over the years. Like, do you think that that's something you had in mind right away? Like, I feel like sometimes at the beginning we just take on projects because we're like, oh, cool, somebody wants to work with me, you know? And I know some producers, we sort of develop that along the way and start by like, no, that didn't work for me, you know?
Right.
I'm curious your sort of journey in building up your projects in that way.
Well, it has been a journey of figuring that out. But when I started grad school, because I was a little bit older, I went in, I think that's why, but I went in with like a mission, and I was like watching all the people and like, who are the people I want to work with? Who are going to be my people? And because there weren't as many producers, you know, you're in demand, so you can make a choice of who you want to work with. And so I tend to be drawn to projects that are bold in some way, that start conversation, bold either in like subject matter, how they're shooting it, or, you know, a unique perspective on the world. And so that's how that's what I found is what I'm drawn to by looking back at the projects that I've done. But when I'm in the midst of it and choosing which projects, it's just which ones are the ones that get me excited, that get me curious, that I think that I would want to fight for, because you know, you ultimately have to fight for every step along the way, which is actually to your question about like why I would choose producing. And I really love, I don't want to say I love to fight, but I love being able to say, like, you think I can't do that? Well, yes, I can.
Yeah.
And I love doing that for people, for filmmakers, that, you know, in the same sense of Riel, of like amplifying voices, of being like, yes, you can tell the story. And also to your point about like audiences, you know, it might be for a limited audience, or what people might call a limited audience, but that doesn't mean that audience isn't worth reaching. And which is a frustrating thing about distributors, because they're sort of narrow-minded in that sense of thinking that you have to, just because you know, if something isn't going to reach a broad audience, means that it's not necessarily something that people want to see. So I'm glad that your company does what it does. I wish and I hope that other distributors could see that, and see that the success that it is, and how it just builds audiences. Actually, if those smaller audiences will grow if they're given a chance to breathe. But yes, but I've definitely made mistakes along the way of like starting to develop projects and then realized that I wasn't right for it, or that it was just not working between me and the filmmaker, and have had to part ways. And it's always a really difficult thing, but I think it's important to do, because it only hurts the project if it's not working out between the director and the writer and the producer.
Are you ever too far along to cut something loose? Like, is there that, sometimes there's that feeling that I'm too deep into it, you know? Like,
I don't know. I think you should always reserve the right to get out of a toxic situation that isn't making you feel good. I mean, this work doesn't pay enough. You're not saving anyone's life. Like, you know, it can make you miserable. Like, it's a hard thing to do. So you want to do it with someone who's on your, like, by your side, like, that you collaborate well with. And there's going to be tough moments, but I mean, I would always reserve the right to get out of the toxic, like, relationship, which, you know, happens. I'm mute because there's a bus.
Are you on a bus route, Riel, or?
Both of you have produced films that feature real people, whether it's with doc or in narrative. I'm curious to know what the legality, possibly nightmare or dream, you guys faced, maybe using the writer and fraud respectively as case studies.
Well, I'll go with the hardest one first, I guess. So fraud.
I was at that hot dog screening, Riel.
Yeah. Where we were called con artists.
Oh, that's what it was. I was trying to remember.
Really? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I was in the audience like,
And they were like, well, at least we're artists. And then half the audience applauded.
it's true. I forgot.
Yes, Fraud. That was our world premiere. Fraud is a very unique piece of cinema in that it is, for people who haven't seen it, essentially the director found this guy's footage on YouTube, this very peculiar man who had been filming his family on a camcorder for years and years, with very little viewership, I'd say 0. And he had a very particular way of filming his family, a lot of zoom ins, and he would just upload it, like seemingly indiscriminately without any edits of any kind. And so there was hundreds of hours of this footage, and the director stumbled upon it on some weird YouTube hole and was like, what, there's so much footage here, like what if you could create a fictional narrative out of this real footage? They're bored, like they're turning a documentary kind of on its head. And so when we presented the film to audiences, and the film was made up of his footage, and I should say other footage we found on the internet, to create a narrative where the family spends all their money and then decides to, burn their house down to collect insurance and then flee the country into Canada, actually. And the way that we went about that was that we, sought permission from the family. We licensed the footage from them and said we were going to edit it into this thing. And it took a long time from when we initially licensed the footage to like cutting the film. And there was a very nervous feeling when we first sent it to them because it doesn't depict them in the most favorable light. Mm-hmm. But they understood it to be what it was, which was like a fictional thing. Even though the experience as an audience is that you think this thing is real because it's presented as such. But yeah, it was legally was a very tricky, a lot of phone calls with clearance lawyers, but we ultimately got there. But it's funny that it's a great question to ask the two of us because that is such a different version of getting people who aren't actors to like be actors, I guess, in a film about them, even though like they weren't aware of it. Like we just they weren't actors, they were just being themselves, and we just created a fiction out of it. But it's the opposite of what you guys are writer, which is to get real people to play versions of themselves, like constructed narrative that is like very close to their own lives.
Yeah, it's sort of like Inside Out. It's really
good. That's right.
I did my research, guys.
Yeah. No, I mean, I point to the writer a lot as a fantastic example of like where cinema is going in terms of telling new stories, but with that are like close to truth and fiction. And,
well, we didn't run into any legality problems with the writer because it was fiction. It was based on his life. Mm-hmm. But it was written. There was a script, and there were things that might have happened in his life at some other point that was just put into happening at this, like the killing of the horse. It was an experience that he had, but prior to his accident, and it was just a story that he had told Chloe, and so she found a way to put it into this narrative. But actually, like the film that I have in post right now, Nomadland, is a fiction, but there's people in it who are completely just playing themselves, and they're telling stories about themselves. And but legality wise, they all sign contracts. Yeah. So, but we are right now dealing with clearances, like with a fair use lawyer, because we're shooting in real locations, and like if you're in a grocery store and all the products that are behind you, you normally in narrative film you think that you can't show any of those, or you have to get them cleared. Whereas this fair use lawyer that we're working with will be putting together an opinion letter of why why it's okay.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's where the hybrid nature of like this doc fiction hybrid gets complicated, because there's protocols in fiction film that like all the brands are cleared and all this stuff, but in documentary hybrid, like it's a real person, they're telling a version of their real life, you're filming them in a real place, but it's put into a film that is fiction, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I mean, we ran into a lot of music clearance issues on Fraud, because in a documentary, like, if there's a background like pop song, like it's okay, like it's just like part of, you know, but if the family is in their car singing along to a song, you need to clear. So it's like very, you know, there's no hard and set rules about this. That's why we get opinion lawyers, because lawyers like create an opinion based on their experience and their expertise in that moment for that particular film. But it's very, varied and nuanced, and some, you know, if you're selling the film if you're making a film for a Netflix or a big company, you have to have all that sewn up. Like they don't have a lot of leeway for that stuff. But if you're making the film independently and taking it out and then like selling it, then you have more room to kind of play with that stuff.
I did though one time. I had to clear New York City graffiti, like
Really?
on the film Fort Tilden. We sold it to MGM Orion, and they got back to us with this clearance of stuff of like we needed to get a release from the graffiti artists, plural, because it was like there was like a camera that just out of the side of a car, just like, you know, drive by, and it caught obviously graffiti.
Oh my god! Really?
And I figured that our lawyer could have argued fair use, but it didn't work. At the time, I didn't know of actual like fair use lawyers, and so I found the graffiti artists.
Wow.
You did not. Oh my
I did.
God. That's crazy.
And one of them like got paid more than the lead actor. Well, who granted though did it for free, but but he got paid like too much.
Yeah.
Huh.
I have a whole like long rant and list about my problems with copyright laws and like fair use, but I will not.
Okay, well you can do that.
Give me a call.
Everyone can DM Riel.
If you want to hear about my documentary copyright law rants.
Everyone's just like, okay, guys, I have a surprise for you. We have this thing that we do called Mystery Guest.
Okay.
Where Jackie and I have found a guest that you both know.
Okay.
This is the graphic, okay? And then
talk through it, Coral.
And now what happens is we take this away. Look, guys, it's Diane. Diane, can you hear us?
Hey.
How are you all?
Fantastic.
Good.
So,
I'm
Diane,
changing
Where are you?
My router, because I have a really bad signal. It's good to see you guys.
Yeah.
So good to see you.
where are you, Diane? Where are you
It's
broadcasting
been a
from?
long time. 9.5. Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you. I can see you.
Yeah. Diane, you're in New York? Can she hear us?
She can't hear us. That's the problem.
Oh no.
I think we have a really the audio. Everybody sounds like robots on my end.
Oh no. Well, we saw Diane for 2 seconds.
Surprise!
Oh boy. All right. Well, maybe we'll try and check in with Diane later. But, there she is, and now she's gonna be gone. Bye, Diane.
Hi, Diane.
No, no.
Poor Diane.
Diane.
Apology.
Oh, Diane. She's
Well,
great.
for those of us who don't know who Diane is,
Yeah, can we
How
inform
dare you?
who Diane is a little bit?
yeah.
Diane Hausland is
Just leave her as a mystery.
a mystery. She's a producer. She was in, so Riel and Mollye and I were all in this cool club called Transatlantic Partners, where we all learned how to do international producing.
Right.
And Diane was also in this group. But I thought it'd be really cool to talk to her because she's in New York as well. And she does TV, unlike all of us.
Let's do TV.
So she had some interesting perspectives when I was able to talk to her earlier.
Right.
And we'll never hear them. So, oh well. Maybe I'll do a separate interview with Diane.
Who out of the three of us actually did an international co-production since doing that program? That's what I was getting at.
Whose country has treaties with other countries?
Yeah.
Oh, you too.
Yeah, I know.
Riel, tell us about having the Instagram name @Riel and your journey with that. It's actually a thing. He's like,
oh, is it?
Tell us about who Riel is.
This isn't interesting to your film forward audience, but I'm Canadian, as I mentioned. I'm born in Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Like me.
I'm named after Louis Riel, who's the famous Métis leader who was, basically founded the province of Manitoba. Anyone can history check me on that. And was a Métis, so half Indigenous, half French, and fought for those rights, Métis rights, and was eventually hung for treason by the Canadian government. So
yeah. But
on Instagram, I managed to snag @Riel from, I believe she was in high school. Her name was Ariel.
Oh no.
We had @Riel, so Ariel. And I DM'd her, said, "Hey, my name's actually Riel, and I love this handle." And she said, "Sure," and she just gave it to me. And ever since then, I am tagged. There's a restaurant in Austin, Texas, I believe, that is named Riel. It's also the currency of Cambodia. It's a lot of things, and therefore I get tagged in a lot of things. A lot of children in Indonesia, for some reason, tag Riel a lot. So there's a whole thing where I'm every day reminded, it's a motorcycle helmet company. I don't know. It's a lot of stuff called Riel. So it's a curse I live with.
I think it's very funny. I like your posts where you repost all the posts that tag you.
I get asked honestly once a week, like if I'll sell my handle to someone. So I get a lot of work.
I bet you get to learn about all kinds of things that are out there that you didn't know about, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're being tagged all these things.
I know.
You should make it into a project, honestly. It sounds like a really fun doc. I want to hear about your guys' experiences at these different producers labs, because that's such a, kind of rite of passage, I would imagine, to be getting into all of these different labs all over the world and meeting all of your peers who are from all these different countries.
Right.
Could you let us know about, anecdotes as well as maybe some tips, things that you wish you knew before you started applying for these labs?
Yeah, did you guys do IFP or those kind of project incubators and stuff? Sundance Labs, things like that. I think those are very, feel like very intimidating and mysterious at first. So it's do you have to know someone to get in? I just submitted a short to Sundance. It's have you done any of our labs? I was no. How do you get in? How do you get in these things?
Mollye,
Tell us the secret.
Well, I think.
Have you done a lot?
Wait, what?
Have you done a lot of labs?
I have, yeah. But I've done IFP, Film Independent, I guess Sundance or Catalyst. But anyway, though, I think I started out not doing more of their markets for projects.
Right.
And so then, well, actually, first with IFP, I when I was applying for NYU film school, I didn't think I was going to get in, so I thought I was going to have to apply again the next year. So I was like, okay, I better like start getting involved in film. And so I started volunteering at all these different places like New York Women in Film and Television and IFP. So I volunteered there and then ended up working there and then have done all of their programs. But so maybe that also was part of it. It was, they were already familiar with me, but I think doing those markets helped first before getting into the labs, because then they're aware of you as a filmmaker and your projects. Because and I think also those markets are less they're curated, obviously, but they're sometimes it can feel like the labs are who you know,
Right.
and part of that networking happens at these. I think for me, it has for the market doing these markets.
Yeah, I've done a lot of the labs. I think all of them.
All of them.
I did the Sundance Producing Lab like 6 years ago. You know, again, there's not a lot of career. I mean, there's film schools. I'm sure there's, and I didn't do film school, but there's a lot of. I'm sure there's like producer-centric programs at these film schools, I assume. But besides that, like, there's not a lot of like career training for being a producer. So I think what's great about like the Creative Producing Lab at Sundance is like it's a little version of that, you know. And they are like very well connected, so you do get a chance to meet a lot of amazing people. I mean, when I got to the Sundance Producing Lab, I was like, I've made it. It was like Quentin Tarantino posters and like Paul Thomas Anderson. You're like, I'm at the center of independent film in America. Like, all my cares are gone, you know. And then like, you know, 2 weeks after, I'm like, oh man, it's exactly the same. Like, it doesn't like change your life like the way you think it should or will. But I think it's incremental. I will also say, like, it's almost like a embarrassment of riches. Like, they literally set you up with meetings with like some of the most powerful people in the independent film scene industry, and you don't know what to do with that. And like, I wish I could go back in time and be like, I can't believe I had that meeting with that person. You know? But I mean, they're all different, you know, like I did the Rotterdam lab was probably the last one that I did. And that was a bit strange because it was like, you know, still like emerging. We were talking about this the other day. Like, I think I've emerged. I don't think I should do this, but it was like I had a short film at Rotterdam and it was like a good excuse to go to Rotterdam. But it turned out the lab is like super intense and like was like class like 9 to 5. I thought I could just like show up and like it was like super intense. I learned some things, definitely. And the ones that are international, like TAP and Rotterdam, are great for, especially if you're Canadian, to open up different opportunities. I mean, that's what you have to do is the co-production thing. So I highly recommend doing them. I think
I'd recommend like applying more than once too. I don't know if that's your experience, but I got into Berlin Alley Talents the third time I applied, and I was like, oh well. Sort of like Mollye, I was like, well,
I mean, all grants and all of these things, you got to just keep applying and you get in, and they each sort of like help each other. So you get into a smaller one, and that'll help with the other one. I think obviously the producing one, the Sundance one is probably the holy grail of them, and is like probably the more challenging one. I think there's a sweet spot, I think, on the narrative end of things for them, and maybe this has changed, but that you've made a movie or 2 movies, but you can't have made more than that. Yeah. Because you're too experienced. Like also
as a lead producer.
As a lead producer.
As a lead producer, because you could have made more.
Yeah, as a lead producer. So there's kind of a sweet spot. So like, you know, I have friends that have never done it, but have made like 4 or 5 movies, and they're like, well, that'll never happen for me. You know, so and that's fine, because like you don't need it, but it's great. What are the other ones? Like the Cannes Producer Network is like really not anything. It's like you get a badge. You know, if I'm honest, you get a badge, which like if you want to buy the badge, like $200. So I think if you're, I don't know, in Canada, I think you might, like, you can maybe get the government or whatever, the telephone to like pony up some money for your travel to go out there. But like in the US, like if IFP gives you the producer network thing, like you just get the badge. Like you got to fly yourself out there, put yourself up. So in a way, like America has Hollywood, it has the center of the industry, But for independent film, almost is like the most starved because we don't have a government-funded arts organization that sees the value of cinema as part of its cultural heritage. So it's just a business here. And so there are grants, there are things, but it's not in the same way like that I see for other countries having gone to these labs and stuff. Where like even if you get into the Rotterdam lab, like you might get your country to subsidize your trip out there and stuff like that. But in America, you don't. So
I have a question.
In America, there's very few organizations that support producers in America.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Mollye about private financing for film. So in Canada, we have this wonderful benevolent overseer that gives us money on different levels and access to public funds. So in America, how do you do it? How do you get the money? I know you've been involved too in something through Sundance where you're kind of talking to prospective investors. So I'm super curious about that experience and also
me too.
how you put together the funds for these films and, you know.
Well, I mean,
why did they do it?
Over the
Tell
years?
Us, how do you get the money?
yeah. After 45 minutes, I'm like, anyway, whatever.
Anyway.
I know there's no guaranteed way, but we're just like, it's a curiosity in Canada, and also some of us are starting to try and do it that way because these funds are starting to dwindle as well. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been very difficult, and it's been a process it's been a process over time because I don't come from money. I don't know people with money, and so I can't go to my family or whatever and friends, and so these programs like the IFP Week and the Fast Track that Film Independent has, where you go and you pitch like speed dating. While I never found money at any of them because all my projects were too small. Meaning that like equity financiers don't think they'll make their money back because they think like that there's not enough audience for the films. And so a lot of the films that I originally, when I first started working, were made with crowdfunding and grants. And but then Sundance Catalyst was the only program where I went to. Actually, and SF Film Invest has something similar now as Sundance, where you are going and pitching to a select group of investors that are people that invest in Sundance or invest in SF Film, and so you do like a presentation in front of everybody, and then you spend, at least at the Sundance Catalyst, you spend basically like a weekend, a few days with these people in various different, you're going hiking with people, you're having dinner with them and getting to know them on like a more personal level and not just like sitting there and pitching your project. But the money that you're getting from that is small. It's not like you're not going to get your whole film financed, at least narrative. I think some docs will get their whole films financed from there. But as far as finding investors, I will still go back. I think it's been, as films have become, the writer was very helpful. So because people then heard about it, then it kind of opened up some doors. So I knew of companies, I knew of investors. Actually, when I worked at Game Changer Films and Equity Fund, when I left, I wrote down all the email addresses of all of the financiers and anything that had come in before I. So that, and then just would cold email people. But then once the writer had its success, I could say my subject line, the writer, and so it truly helped be able to open up doors. But prior to that, I like on the film Swallow, I brought on a producer that I knew had those financing connections, and so then now my financing connections have grown from that. So I knew that was one of the things that I lacked, and so I found somebody who had those connections to team up with, and then from that experience, I've not only have grown my network of equity investors, but also I learned how to negotiate with the investors, and that whole process, which is can be an emotional roller coaster, because there'll be situations where you'll have one equity investor who wants to recoup first, for example, and then your majority financier, who usually can dictate the rules, will say no, and so you'll have to give up this money. Basically, we had to do that on Swallow with a couple of financiers who wanted to put money in, but the majority financier nixed it. Actually, then that majority financier dropped out, and we had to after like making us turn down all these deals.
Oh boy!
But it's just taken time, networking, and trying to continue to make good work even without the money. And then I think good work leads to finding money.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback off that, I do think the markets are important, and even at this point in my career, I still do them for projects, especially, even first, second time directors. Like I just did the Sheffield one. I've done PH last year, did IDFA. I mean, those are all doc ones, but like obviously IFP and I think those markets are valuable. I've never gotten money directly from them per se. Like no one's like written a check and like, this project's incredible, but you build those relationships, and getting money, like there's a certain group of people that want to put money into films, right? They have the experience to do so, they have the willingness to do so, they hopefully have made money doing something else and want to like experiment in getting into film. So that's kind of who you want to get in touch with, people who understand the business. Like and I've heard people do this, like line up like 10 dentists, or like somebody who, like, you don't want to be the first person that introduces a financier to investing in film. Like, I mean, you can, sure, do it, but like, you want to be partnering up with somebody who's savvy, who understands the business, understands the risks, because you don't want to go to, some wealthy grandmother on your cousin's side or whatever, and then be like, it's just going to be, like, there is some value from the financier deciding to invest in your film. Like, it means they see something in it, right? And that's important too. If you just get dumb money from people who don't get it, then that's not really a good sign that like you have something of value. So I think going to those markets is very important. I think some money is more expensive than other money, meaning that like some financiers are a total pain in the ass and they're not worth the financing, to be honest. So you want to be careful who you partner up with. You want to be careful what those terms are. You shouldn't just give everything away because you're so desperate to have someone finance your film. And you shouldn't view it.
And also to piggyback off, and don't want to give them everything, because then it ruins it for the other people, because then they think those investors think they can always get whatever, like producer credit.
Money. Yeah, campsite rules. What is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think that you want to bring people on that like understand the vision of the film, and like this whole like Trojan horse, like tricking them into investing in one thing and actually making another is going to blow up in your face.
I bet.
So you have to be careful about that as well. And you want to go with financiers that understand it, and the pool of them is not that huge, to be honest. Like, look at the films that have been financed in the last few years that you like. Try and see who EP'd them or produced them, and see what they're financing. And like, you can kind of make a list pretty quickly. How you get in touch with them is another thing, but like, you can kind of figure out who's out there, and they're rotating out because it's not a business that makes money. And they'll come in, like the company I used to work for was financed by someone who worked in the power business, and had power plants, and they wanted to get into film. They got into film until at a certain point they couldn't really stomach it anymore, And so financiers will disappear because it didn't work out for them, It's kind of like gambling. Like, the house wins, like, they get into it. But the smart ones, like, figure out a way that they mitigate their risk and they get involved in things, or they don't care about the financial reward part of it. They just want to get into it because they want to do something that's meaningful, and they want to do something that gets them close to celebrities or gets them at festivals. And if you can offer all of that, like, you're doing something important by investing in this film. Like, you have to, the thing I was going to say is you should always view it as a value proposition. not begging for money. You shouldn't be thinking of it like you're begging for money for this thing that has no value. You have something valuable, and you need to look at money as like, I'm offering you a chance to get into this thing.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, if you frame it like that, you have a much better chance of them wanting to get involved and creating like a timeline for which the ship will sail. And so they will miss the boat, you know? You can't just be, I will, you know, I need you to finance this, and you're the only way this will happen, and I'll sit around and wait for you forever. That's not going to motivate anyone, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So
that's great advice, you guys. That's very good advice. We'll take those contacts from you after, though, right?
Yeah.
Put them on that. He like runs away with his BlackBerry.
To finish off in the last 5 minutes, I wanted to ask about the movement that's happening right now with Black Lives Matter. Both of you guys have produced films that deal with racial injustice, whether explicitly or implicitly, and have worked with a number of POC creatives. I'm wondering how this movement is impacting you guys and how you are evaluating or reevaluating your practices as producers who are working with the people that you're working with, how best to serve them during this time.
Yeah. Mollye, you want to kick this off?
Well, I'm in post right now on a film that it's about a boxer whose sister goes missing, and she plans her own abduction to find her. And it's played by a real person. It's not really her story, but she's a real boxer, and she's part indigenous and part Black, Cape Verdean, and in life, not only is she a boxer, but she's an activist. And one of the things that she does always before a fight is she goes down on her knee and prays, and that's a scene in the film. And sorry, I was just watching the cut, and it just meant a lot more seeing that moment right now, and especially because she's a woman too, a woman athlete, and Black and indigenous, and I'm glad that I was already working on a project that meant a lot to me, but then I think it will mean even more coming out into the world now. And so I think what's going on in the world is just giving me more reason to continue making films like that.
Yeah, I agree. I can't wait to see that. I think, we've always prided ourselves on like telling new stories and finding new artists. And so it's never been like our mission statement or anything that we like hang our hat on. It's just like what we do. And so we're going to keep doing that. But I have been in a lot of conversations with other producers and production companies about like what we can do better. There's not enough Black producers. There just isn't, and why is that? And like the same way, we started this off, like I started out as an intern, like you have to start somewhere and you just have to make the effort. And as much as so much of our community prides itself on telling stories on like, people on the margins or like shining a light on things that aren't being depicted in commercial like film or just like it's still, there's a lot of more we can do on the inside of the organizations in the way that they're structured and who we hire. And I think we're all thinking about how to do better. And like all my conversations of the last 2 weeks with like cinematographers, production designers, and other producers is like, where were we not doing enough? So I think we're all having those conversations. And also I will say, like, I think we've left a lot of that up to the like Sundances and the granting organizations to do the focusing on like female filmmakers, people of color, and as producers and production companies have like sort of not because so much of it is going on in our industry, we've sort of like left it to them in a way, and I don't think we should anymore. I think we need to do better. So I don't have the answers, but I think there's a lot of questions being asked about how to do better, and not just for the short term, because I know this is a moment, and a lot of people are donating a lot of money and time and energy and going out protesting, which like I've done a ton of, but like these are long-term goals that we need to have, and these are like systemic problems that don't get solved with a lot of donations. They get solved with like actual change. So that's sort of the conversation that we're having.
Thank you both so much. I think you're such thoughtful, creative artists, and your curation and all your work is so appreciated. And thank you for spending time with us today. Really appreciate it.
So good to see you all.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wish I could give you guys a hug
Bye.
next time. All right, I'm gonna get rid of you guys and just talk to Jackie about you behind your back now. All right.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you both so much. Jackie.
Coral.
Duo. We duo.
Mm-hmm.
So should we break the news to everybody that next week is our last episode? Oh, I just did it. Oopsies.
It's broken. It's gone. Yeah, next week is our last episode, guys. It's been so fun doing it.
Yeah. Don't say goodbye yet, Jackie.
Yeah, right? I'm getting ready. This is my little speech. My goodbye speech. No, but we have a really fun episode for you, planned for you guys next week.
Yeah.
So it should be a good send off. Who do we have on the Skillin It
All right.
show?
Well, first of all, Jackie, I'm gonna miss you so much. And I'm gonna call you every day. And we might be cooking something up together.
Maybe. We'll see.
Maybe we'll see.
I don't know.
TBD. So next week we're gonna call the episode the one about acting, but with the disclaimer that this episode is going to be with two creatives who are doing many, many more things and have leveraged their careers as actors into a really wonderful road for themselves as creatives. So we're going to be talking to Hannah Cheeseman and Vanessa Matsui.
Boom.
Boom. And Jackie's Corner is going to be up right after this.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Jackie's Corner this week. I spoke to a fantastic writer-director, Emma Seligman, who's based in New York. She's from Toronto. So
Cool.
We talked about her journey as an emerging artist that's Canadian and is now in the States, and how she adapted her short Shiva Baby into a feature film that premiered at South by this year. So watch that after this.
Look at this.
Oh,
Kirsten. And then look, she had this suggestion too. Separate interview with Diane. I think I might give Diane a call and do a little Skillin It extra.
Exactly. We did not give Diane the respect that she deserves. So yes, we will do a Skillin It extra with Diane.
Yeah. Diane's very cool. I'm sad you guys didn't get to meet her, but you will.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to put up that image that says goodbye. Goodbye to us, Jackie.
Farewell.
Thanks, Jackie.
Until next week.
Bye.
Bye.
End.